The palace was awake long before the sun. Corridors echoed with restrained footsteps, doors opened and closed with deliberate softness, and schedules moved forward with mechanical precision. Yet beneath the surface, something vital had begun to fracture. William stood alone in his private study, staring at a document he had read 3 times without absorbing a single word. Outside the tall windows, London stretched into the early morning haze. The city was alive. The institution was functioning. The crown was steady. But his world was not. He pressed his palms against the desk and exhaled slowly, as though grounding himself would somehow pull order back into place. His phone lay nearby, screen dark. No messages. No missed calls. No response. For the first time since his childhood, William felt something unfamiliar and deeply unsettling. He was no longer in control of the narrative. Across the palace, several floors away, Camilla sat before a gilded mirror while an attendant adjusted the clasp of her necklace. Her reflection smiled back at her, composed, immaculate, entirely assured. "Cancel the late afternoon meeting," she said calmly. "I'll be needed elsewhere." "Yes, Your Majesty." The attendant stepped back, eyes lowered. Camilla rose, smoothed the fabric of her dress, and studied herself once more. The palace had always been a game of timing. And timing at last was on her side. A faint smile lingered at the corner of her lips, not joy, not cruelty, but something colder. Satisfaction. Elsewhere, far from the cameras, the countryside breathed differently. Wind moved freely through tall grass. Trees whispered instead of watched. And the house, old, dignified, unpretentious, held a silence that felt like mercy. Catherine stood at the window, tea untouched beside her. Here there were no handlers. No schedules printed in red. No expectations to perform serenity. Only space. She rested a hand against the glass and closed her eyes. For months, she had told herself she could endure just a little longer. Just one more compromise. One more unspoken slight. One more meeting where her voice was politely ignored. One more smile she did not feel. Until endurance stopped feeling like strength and began feeling like self-erasure. Behind her, the house stirred softly. Children's laughter drifted from the hallway, unforced, unmeasured, real. That sound had saved her. The moment that changed everything. It hadn't been an argument. That was the cruel part. It was a meeting. Polite. Civil. Carefully controlled. A long table. Fine china. Courteous words layered over sharper intentions. Camilla had spoken gently, even kindly. "We must think about stability," she had said. "About visibility. About what reassures the public." Catherine had listened, hands folded, posture flawless. And then came the line, softly delivered, expertly framed. "Perhaps some roles no longer need to be as prominent as before." No name mentioned. No accusation made. But everyone at the table knew exactly who was being diminished. Catherine had looked to William then. Just once. He had not met her eyes. That silence had landed heavier than any insult. Back in the present, William finally moved. He reached for his phone and typed a message he erased twice before sending. "We need to talk. Please." The reply never came. Across the palace, advisors whispered. Schedules adjusted. Rumors bloomed like ink in water. And Camilla walked the corridors with effortless calm, nodding graciously to staff who sensed, without fully understanding, that the balance had shifted. She paused briefly near a tall window overlooking the inner courtyard. Below, the flag moved gently in the wind. "Change," she murmured to herself, "always unsettles those who fear it." Her smile returned. That night, Catherine sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, brushing hair back from a sleeping face. "I'm here," she whispered, though no one heard. In the quiet, she allowed herself one truth she had avoided for too long. Leaving wasn't abandonment. It was preservation. She rose, stepped into the hall, and closed the door softly behind her. Outside, the stars were bright. And for the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not certainty, but possibility. The palace without her. The palace noticed her absence before the public did. It wasn't announced. No bells rang. No statement was released. Yet something unmistakable shifted. Corridors felt longer. Meetings felt heavier. Conversations ended sooner than usual, as though everyone sensed an empty space they weren't allowed to name. William felt it most acutely. A house that still functioned without feeling alive. Morning briefings continued as scheduled. Advisors spoke in calm, practiced tones. Pages turned. Tablets lit up with engagement itineraries and carefully worded contingency plans. William sat at the head of the table, nodding at appropriate moments, signing documents, offering brief acknowledgments. From the outside he looked composed. Inside he was unraveling. He kept glancing toward the empty chair beside him, the one Catherine usually occupied during private planning meetings. She had always listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, she asked questions no one else thought to ask. Questions about impact, about long-term meaning, about people, not optics. Now the chair remained empty, and no one mentioned it. The silence that exposed everything. By mid-morning the calls began. Foreign offices seeking reassurance. Charitable boards asking for clarity. Senior aides requesting guidance they would normally have taken from Catherine directly. William answered each inquiry carefully, professionally. But the truth gnawed at him. He didn't know how much she had carried until she wasn't there to carry it anymore. In the past, when tensions rose, Catherine had quietly absorbed the pressure, smoothing over disagreements, translating palace expectations into humane action. Without her, everything felt sharper, colder, less forgiving. Camilla steps forward. Camilla noticed the vacuum immediately, and she filled it, effortlessly. She appeared in meetings she hadn't previously attended, offered guidance before it was requested, spoke with authority wrapped in reassurance. She needs rest, Camilla said softly to one group of advisors. This is all very understandable, she told another. We must ensure continuity, she reminded everyone. Always we. Always stability. Always the crown. William listened, uneasy. Not because her words were incorrect, but because they landed too smoothly. Too ready. At one point, during a briefing about upcoming public appearances, Camilla turned slightly toward him. Perhaps I should attend in her place, she suggested lightly. Just until things settle. The room stilled. William hesitated. In that pause, Camilla's faint smile surfaced, brief, controlled, almost invisible. But he saw it, and something inside him tightened. The public begins to notice. By the second day, speculation reached a low simmer. Photographers lingered longer outside palace gates. Columnists wrote thoughtful pieces about pressure, resilience, and duty. Online discussions filled with coded concern. Still, no official statement. The palace preferred silence. Silence preserved control. But silence also invited interpretation. William watched headlines scroll past on his phone late that night, long after the palace lights dimmed. Where is she? Is this temporary? What does this mean for the future? None of the questions had answers. Not yet. A smirk seen by too many eyes. It happened during a reception. A small one. Carefully selected guests. No press invited, officially. Camilla moved through the room with practiced grace, greeting dignitaries, accepting compliments, deflecting curiosity. Someone mentioned Catherine. Just casually. Almost kindly. Camilla paused. Only for a moment. Then she smiled. Not warmly. Not sympathetically. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A smirk. Those closest to power noticed. And they remembered. William finally breaks the pattern. That night, William did something he hadn't done in years. He ignored protocol. He dismissed aides early, left his phone behind, and walked, alone, through the palace gardens. Memories rose unbidden. Catherine laughing in this very space, shoes in hand after a long event. Her quiet frustration when dismissed by senior figures. Her patience stretched thin. He stopped near the old oak tree where they had once stood after a difficult year, promising each other they would never let duty hollow out their marriage. The realization hit him slowly, painfully. He had let it happen anyway. Not through cruelty, but through absence. Meanwhile, far from the palace walls, Catherine woke early. Not from anxiety. From clarity. The countryside light filtered gently through the curtains. Birds stirred. The house breathed. She made breakfast with her children, not for them, with them. No staff hovering. No clock counting. Later, she sat alone with a notebook she hadn't touched in years. Not official notes. Not speeches. Just thoughts. And for the first time in a long while, she wrote without editing herself. She didn't know what would come next. But she knew one thing with certainty. She would never return to the version of herself that had quietly disappeared. The crown begins to feel heavy. Back at the palace, William received a message from his father. We need to speak. He closed his eyes. He knew the conversation was coming. The reckoning was approaching. And somewhere deep inside, he understood a truth that frightened him more than scandal, more than headlines, more than any constitutional concern. If Catherine chose not to come back, the palace would survive. But he might not. The smirk that exposed everything. The palace had survived wars, abdications, and scandals that shook empires. What it was less prepared for was exposure. Not through rebellion. Not through betrayal. But through a single expression that revealed what words had carefully concealed for months. The day the mask slipped. The event was meant to project unity. A ceremonial appearance. A carefully choreographed walk through history and heritage. Flags. Music. Applause. William stood beside Camilla beneath the vaulted arches of the grand hall, cameras positioned at precise angles, lighting adjusted to perfection. From the outside it looked seamless. Inside, something fractured. A reporter called out a question, not aggressive, not disrespectful. Just honest. Has the Princess of Wales offered any comment regarding her continued absence? Camilla turned first. William barely had time to register it. Her lips curved. Not slowly. Not thoughtfully. Instantly. It was small. But devastating. A smirk. The room felt it. Gasps didn't echo. Nothing so dramatic. But eyes widened. Cameras paused, then resumed. Instincts sharpened. William felt heat rise up his spine. He turned sharply toward her. For a split second, Camilla realized what she'd done. Too late. The moment had already escaped containment. The smile vanished, replaced by practiced composure, but the damage was irreversible. Because power isn't revealed by words. It's revealed when restraint disappears. That night, advisors panic. Phones rang non-stop. Screens replayed slowed footage of the moment. What was that expression? Was that satisfaction? Why now? The palace communications team worked furiously, issuing soft clarifications, contextual explanations, and vague reassurances. But something had changed. The public had seen confidence where concern should have been. William sat in a private room, staring at the paused frame on a tablet screen. He didn't recognize the woman beside him. And worse, he finally recognized the mistake he had made by staying silent for so long. The confrontation William could no longer avoid. Later that evening he found her in a private sitting room. Camilla looked up calmly as he entered. "Quite a day," she said lightly. William didn't sit. "What was that?" he asked. She tilted her head. "I beg your pardon?" That expression. That moment. You knew cameras were there. Her eyes sharpened just briefly. "I smiled," she replied. "Is that a crime now?" "That wasn't sympathy," William said quietly. "That wasn't concern." Camilla stood. "You're imagining things," she said smoothly. "You're under stress." "No," William replied. "I'm finally seeing clearly." The silence stretched. Then Camilla spoke, slower now. "You're struggling because you're not used to leading alone," she said. "And because Catherine chose distance." William flinched. "She didn't choose distance," he said. "She chose dignity." Camilla's expression hardened. "You'll learn," she replied. "This institution rewards those who endure." William met her gaze. "And destroys those who are ignored." Meanwhile, far away yet fully aware, Catherine didn't watch the footage. She didn't need to. She felt the shift before the news arrived. Texts came from people who had never texted her directly before. Not dramatic. Not conspiratorial. Just different. "You were right. Something's changed. Be careful." She closed her phone and looked out across the fields. For months she had wondered if she was imagining things. She was too sensitive. Too quiet. Too unwilling to play the game. Now, the truth was revealing itself without her lifting a finger. The children asked questions adults can't avoid. That evening George approached her. He didn't smile. "Mum," he said carefully, "are people angry?" She knelt to his level. "Some are confused," she replied. "About us?" She paused. "Yes." He nodded, absorbing it with a maturity that broke her heart. "Are we okay?" She cupped his face gently. "We are more than okay," she said. "We are honest." That was enough for him. The crown feels the weight of exposure. Back at the palace, William stood alone on the balcony late into the night. Below him the city glowed, unaware, relentless, alive. For the first time, he understood something his grandmother had known instinctively. Power without empathy corrodes itself. And silence when it protects the wrong thing becomes betrayal. He took out his phone. Not to issue a statement. Not to manage perception. But to send one message, the most difficult one of his life. "I understand now. And I'm ready to listen." He didn't know if she would reply. But for the first time the message was real. William's reckoning. The message remained unread. Not because Catherine ignored it. but because some words require silence before they can be answered. William waited longer than he ever had in his life. And for the first time he didn't try to fill the space. The weight of choice. The palace woke slowly that morning. Not with crisis, but with unease. Meetings were shorter. Advisors measured every sentence. No one smiled too easily. William stood at the window of his private quarters, watching rain streak down the glass. For years he had believed leadership meant endurance. Absorb the pressure. Maintain balance. Never react. But endurance had taught him something bitter. You can survive a long time while losing everything that matters. A conversation with the past. He visited his father that afternoon. Not as an heir, but as a son. The room was quiet. Familiar. Heavy with memory. Charles listened without interrupting as William finally spoke. I thought silence was strength, William said. I thought staying neutral protected everyone. Charles folded his hands. And now? William swallowed. Now I see it protected the wrong things. Charles exhaled slowly. Your grandmother once told me, he said, that leadership is not avoiding discomfort. It's choosing which discomfort you're willing to endure. William nodded. He finally understood. The private meeting that changed everything. That evening, William requested a private audience. No aides. No notes. No optics. Camilla arrived composed, unhurried. You wanted to see me? She asked. Yes, William replied. And this time, I need you to listen. She sat. He did not. I won't ask you to apologize, he said. I won't accuse you. But I will set a boundary. Her expression cooled. My marriage is not a variable, William continued. Catherine is not optional. And her absence is not an opportunity. The room held its breath. Camilla studied him carefully. This institution requires adaptability, she said. And it requires integrity, William replied. I failed at that once. I won't again. For the first time, Camilla didn't respond immediately. Because power shifts aren't loud. They're quiet. And irreversible. Across the fields, an answer finally comes. Catherine's phone buzzed just after sunset. One message. Not rehearsed. Not careful. Honest. I don't want you back as an obligation. I want you back as my partner, if you choose to return. She read it twice, then set the phone down. And cried. Not from pain. From release. The children noticed the change. The next morning the children laughed more easily. They didn't know why, but they felt it. Catherine watched them from the kitchen doorway, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, heart steady for the first time in weeks. She didn't know what she would do yet. But she knew this. If she returned it would be on new terms. The palace feels the shift. Whispers softened. Schedules paused. And for the first time since Catherine's departure, the palace felt recalibrated. Not repaired. But honest. William stood alone in the great hall that night. No cameras. No advisors. Just a man who had finally chosen courage over convenience. And somewhere beyond the walls, Catherine watched the stars again, knowing that whatever came next would be written together. Or not at all. A crown learns humility. The palace had always believed stability came from silence. But silence had nearly cost it everything. The morning that felt different. The announcement was brief. No grand language. No dramatic framing. Just clarity. The Princess of Wales would resume public life gradually, with a renewed focus on family, well-being, and causes close to her heart. No explanations. No defenses. No apologies offered to the public. The tone alone said more than any statement ever could. Across the country people noticed, not because it was loud, but because it was human. Catherine returns, on her own terms. She did not return to applause. She returned to quiet respect. No motorcade. No ceremony. Just a simple arrival early in the morning when the palace halls were still half asleep. William waited. Not as a prince. As a husband. They stood facing one another for a long moment, neither speaking. No rehearsed lines. No public gestures. Then Catherine spoke. This time, she said gently, we do this together or not at all. William nodded. I understand, he replied. Finally. The children anchor the future. Later that day the children ran through the gardens as if nothing in the world had ever been broken. Their laughter echoed against stone walls that had seen centuries of power struggles, betrayals, and fragile alliances. Catherine watched them heart full. This was why she had left. And why she had returned. A smirk replaced by silence. Camilla observed from a distance. No confrontation followed. No dramatic fallout. Just a quiet recalibration. Invitations adjusted. Roles clarified. Influence redistributed. The palace did not punish. It corrected. And in that correction the smirk disappeared. Power, once exposed, no longer needed to perform. William addresses the truth without saying it. Weeks later, William spoke publicly for the first time since the crisis. His words were measured, but unmistakable. Leadership, he said, is not about control. It's about responsibility, especially to those closest to us. The audience listened, because this time the words matched the man. Catherine's quiet victory. She did not claim triumph. She did not rewrite history. She simply lived differently. She spoke when it mattered, withdrew when necessary, and refused to disappear again. The public noticed something subtle but profound. She no longer looked like she was surviving. She looked like she was standing. The crown endures, because it changed. Institutions don't fall when challenged. They fall when they refuse to listen. This one had listened just in time. The monarchy continued, but it carried a new lesson etched into its walls. Power must bend, or it breaks. The final image. That evening, Catherine and William stood together on the terrace. No photographers. No audience. Just dusk settling over the land. "Are you glad you came back?" William asked quietly. Catherine considered the question. "I'm glad I left," she replied. "And I'm glad you learned." He smiled, not proudly, gratefully. Below them, the palace lights came on one by one. Not blazing, steady. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a crown can do is bow to humility.